what's up guys? So today I'm out here in the garage working on the GTO. Those of you who don't know, this is my 71 GTO convertible that I've been doing a frame off restoration on for probably the past 10 years, unfortunately. Mostly it's ready to be finished. I actually have all the interior, etc. for it. It's just finishing it to get it painted. So it's already been primed once or twice. Stuff's been repaired and changed that I didn't like this whole complete fender. Now it's in primer again, which was a couple months ago. I sprayed it all in high build primer. Guide coated it, as you can see. Well, actually, I primered it quite a few months ago, blocked it, found a bunch of things I didn't like, fixed them, pinholes and whatnot, re-primed it, let it sit, guide coated it, and now I'm block sanding it, which is super fun. As you can see, I already found one small spot here that was a little weird, and there was a few spots I had to fix, but overall it's actually pretty good. So this is, I'm blocking it now with 280 grit sandpaper, I believe. Let's see, no, 220. Goes on a Durablock like this, working on this front bumper, as you can see. So you can see where the red paint was, and then you can see here where the red paint is gone and how nice and smooth it is now. Anywhere that the red paint doesn't disappear is where there's a low spot or high spot or etc. So it's looking pretty good. I'm hoping to block the whole car with the 220 grit, reprime any spots that I had to fix or go over again, and then I'm going to sand it again with 400 grit, and then it should be pretty much ready to get painted. I'm hoping, because I really want to have this thing done. I keep saying that, and it doesn't get done. It was supposed to be done by this year. I worked on it in the winter, last winter, if you guys saw those videos, but never quite got it together, as you can see. But I'm really trying, sort of, kind of. Summer comes and there's other cars to work on, as you know, all kinds of stuff. They're all parked for the winter because it's crappy out. It hasn't really snowed a ton yet, but it isn't nice. Nova is getting some work this winter. Not 100% sure what yet. Thinking about doing possibly TRZ upper lower control arms and a steering rack. I'm gonna see, because it's expensive. I don't know. It's gonna cost quite a bit of money for all that stuff, so I'm trying to decide if I want to spend the money on that stuff. I also have to pull the engine out, because I found, it's been sitting here because it's been cold out, that I have some water leaking from the driver's side cylinder head, kind of like between the head and the block. So I don't know if it blew a head gasket or something, or if it lifted the head a little bit. I had issue at the last time at the track. I was learning my boost controller, and on the one pass there it spiked to like 25 pounds, which I didn't really have the car tuned for that, so I don't know if I heard something, but yet it still runs great. There's no water in the combustion chambers / oil, anything like that. So I think it's just the gasket, I'm hoping. But I'm thinking about pulling the engine out, go through it, just check, make sure everything's okay. As far as the S-10 goes, I'm also going to pull the engine out of that this winter, try to figure out what that ticking noise is. I changed those LS7 lifters in a previous video, which you haven't watched it, you should go watch it. And it still makes the noise. It might have something to do with this cam plate that the LSs have that are notorious for leaking, and maybe it's not getting enough oil to the top of the engine, and that's why it's noisy. Could be something else, but I think I'm going to pull the engine out, tear it apart, go through everything. Something that I am going to do, BTR, Brian Tooley Racing, they just came out with a shaft mounted, kind of like a trunnion upgrade, but it's like a shaft mounted trunnion upgrade. You still use the stock rockers, but then you put it's like a shaft mounted system. So I'm thinking about buying that for the Nova. Then I'll take the trunnion upgraded rockers, which are also BTR, off of here, and they'll go on the S-10 this winter, which is the nice thing about having a couple LS powered vehicles, as you can swap parts when you do upgrades. So that's kind of the plan with the Nova. Of course, there's 100 million plans, put a new roll cage in, etc., which I'd like to do too, but kind of doubt that all that's going to get done this winter. The S-10, like I said, pull the engine out, go through it. I also want to pull the transmission out, I think, and kind of go through it. It's a 4L80E. It works pretty good, but then at the same time, it does some weird things. If it gets too hot, it's like it sticks in overdrive kind of, or not overdrive, the lockup converter kind of stays stuck on, it seems like. It wants to stall in gear and in reverse, which a lot of people are saying could be low line pressure. Also could just be getting too hot. I might move the transmission cooler because I kind of have it mounted under the floor and it has a fan on it. And I don't know, maybe it's not getting enough cooling. But I think I might take the transmission apart, take it apart, inspect everything, you know, see the condition. I also, when I rebuilt the trans before, I didn't change the pistons that have like built-in rubber kind of like O-rings on them. I never replaced those, so I think maybe I'll replace those. And there's a couple other little things you can do to them to make it better. Sonic sells a couple things that I might order for it, put in. So I don't know if the truck's staying in the garage all winter. It's in here right now. I drove it the other day and I just kind of pulled it in the garage, and I threw this car cover on, which I bought, which doesn't really fit. It was on a clearance. It's like $30, so I couldn't resist buying it. I figured it would work on something. It doesn't really fit on anything, even the Cobalt. It would fit on the Cobalt if it didn't have the big wing on the back, but it more or less fits on here, so I just threw it on there for the heck of it. So anyways, what I'm going to do today is just sanding on this thing. So I'm not going to film like every single thing that I'm doing because it's boring, but I'll just kind of keep you updated on what I'm doing, show you a little bit of any kind of techniques. Not that I'm an expert, but of what to do when you're block sanding. I already started doing it now a little bit, and I'm just going to kind of work my way across, and then I'll start maybe on this part, and when I'm doing that part, I'll show you guys a few things on the best way to go about sanding it, etc. So yeah, let's get to work. One thing that you definitely need when you're doing this is lots of light. So I ended up putting a whole bunch of LED lights in, as you can see, which it definitely brightened it up a lot in the garage. But because I had 8-foot long ones before, now I only got 4-foot ones, so you can kind of see they used to go further over. This side of the garage is kind of darker, and so is that far side of the garage, but just kind of like over here. But the way I look at it, oh, there goes the heater because it's cold out. I do most of the stuff in the middle of the garage anyways. Pretty much the Nova just sits over there and the GTO sits over here when it's not being worked on. But I also did take 2 of the 8-footers that were on the ceiling and I put them here so that when I am doing that side of the block sanding, I'll be able to put those lights on, give me light. But right now I just have this light here. And as you can see, I'm sanding. It's going pretty good. So, you know, you can kind of see here how they're still red. But here it's pretty good. But see, that's the thing. You can see, like, it's probably hard for you guys to see, but there is a little bit of red right there. There's also a spot right here that's red. Little tiny spot. So that's a spot that's gonna need a little bit of like glazing putty, like that blue stuff you saw over there. I did put on like, I don't know, 3 or 4 coats of pretty thick primer on the bumper, so I'm hoping that it's gonna be good enough. It might need another coat, but I mean, it's a good, you know, I didn't have to sand it with like a thicker, heavier grit sandpaper like I did with the rest of the car. So I think I started with 150 grit the first time I blocked it, and now I'm at 220, and then like I said, the next time I'll go with like a 400. I might even, depending on how the rest of the car goes in terms of like when I'm sanding it, if I burn through or like there's low or high spots or anything, I'm not gonna do any more. I shouldn't have to do, and I don't really want to have to do any more body work
Any little light glazing to fill in any little imperfections is fine, but I don't want to be like, I gotta grind this down and redo it, because I've been doing that for the past I don't know how long, because every time I find something I don't like, I redo it, which is good, but then it also takes forever. So I'm using this thin Durablock right now because I'm doing a small area, and then I also just have some sandpaper like this for doing kind of some of the smaller spots here. You're just gonna kind of go lightly. I mean, when you're doing a major panel, which I'll show you later, like the door or the fender or quarter panel, you kind of want to go in like you want to sand this way a little bit, then you might want to sand this way. You don't want to really go up and down or just this way. You want to kind of angle it this way, like this. And then I always like use this rag to clean up, unclog the sandpaper because it sands better. So here, this isn't as critical because this isn't something that, you know, you're gonna see from the side in terms of the car being nice and flat. And I mean, the idea is that you want to sand away the red and smooth it out, but you don't want to sand the primer right off. If you're sanding the primer right off, then like right here, I sanded the primer kind of right off, and there's actually like a little dip here that's gonna have to get a little bit of that putty, just a little bit. But ideally, especially when you get to the like finer grit sandpaper blocking, you shouldn't be sanding through the primer, because A, the primer should be thick enough and you shouldn't have any high or low spots that is going to cause you to sand through the primer, right? Like on that front fender there, you can see there's a couple spots where it's sanded through to the body filler or bare metal. And I mean, that just could be because that's flat as the rest, but that shouldn't really happen. But like I said, that fender doesn't quite have as much primer on it as the rest of the car does. But like I said, this is very boring, very tedious. You know, I guess if I don't know. I guess if I had the money, maybe I'd pay somebody to do it. But at the same time, you know, I do like doing it. It's one of these things where it's hard to like come out in the garage and start working on it, because it's just, you know, you're gonna sit here sanding, getting covered in dust for 3 hours. But then once I get to work and I'm out here for a while, you know, 4 hours goes by and then I want to keep working. So it's just one of those things where you gotta, even though you know it probably sucks, you gotta motivate yourself to get out. And that goes with anything, I guess. You're not gonna get anything done if you just sit in the house and do nothing, right? You gotta motivate yourself to get out and do the work. Because there is a payoff at the end, I guess. I mean, when the car's done, it's gonna be nice to drive. I've missed it. I've had this car for a long time, and I haven't driven it in quite a long time, and I really regret it. Some days I regret taking it apart, because it was a running, driving car. It wasn't like it was a wrecked car or something, or a rust bucket. It was, I was actually driving it, so I kind of regret some days taking it all apart, but I know that when it's done, finally, and it's back together, you know, it'll all have been worth it. But I have to keep telling myself that, I guess. Pretty much sanded from one side to the other, but not around the corner, of course, because I can't reach over there. And then I did the edge here, which is the most important, because when the grills go in, this inner kind of part here, like deeper part of the grill, you don't really see, but I'm still gonna sand that. I just didn't sand it yet. And it's really not, like I said, it's not as important if it's really nice and straight and smooth. There is a few little spots here, a bunch of them. There was a whole bunch of little cracks, I guess, in the rubber that you could kind of see, but that's the nice thing about this primer is it's super thick, so as you put it on, those things just kind of disappear. And there is a couple little tiny ones I'll have to use a bit of that putty on. So what I'm going to start on now is I'll do kind of this section here, and I'll kind of show you that. Now, I wish I had video, and I wish I was making YouTube videos back when I did all the bodywork on this car, because I did a lot. New floor pans, trunk pans, wheel houses, like all kinds of stuff. And actually this hood, I stripped it to bare metal. I ended up replacing this from this spot, here, and here. This whole front piece I had to make a new one of because it was rusted, then it was patched over top with braze welds, and then bondoed, and it was like thick Bondo on here. Now, you know, it's all metal, right? So, yeah, I have pictures. I should probably pull them up, find the pictures, and maybe post up at some point some of the pictures of the total restoration of this car. Maybe one of these days I'll put some, or we'll add some into one of these videos. Okay, so now we're going to sand this. So it's going to kind of go one way, and then we'll go kind of the other way on an angle. I could also use that longer, I'll get that longer block. Might be actually better for this bigger area. So this is the same kind of Durablock. I got these from Summit. They're a really good deal, like 80 bucks, and you get a whole bunch of different sizes. And they're flexible, so they go, you can kind of bend them to conform if you have to. See, now, I'll show you something here. See, like, now I got some primer, or some like body filler came out underneath. So either this could be a little high still here, or it just was, the primer was thin. But the whole idea is, you know, you're trying to level the panel out to make it flat, right? And so if it sucks, you hope that it should be pretty flat. But as you can see, as I'm sanding, I'm not taking off all the red yet, and I've already gone right through the primer into the filler, which, like I said, is okay. This high build primer is meant to fill in any like low spots, you know, minor low spots, etc. I mean, it feels nice and flat. It also might be that I didn't put tons of primer on the hood too. Another thing you can do too is wet sanding, which wet sanding is nice because the sandpaper doesn't clog up so easy. This is an area where I'm going to have to like re-prime it afterwards before I re-block it next time with the finer sandpaper. That's the problem with doing body work like this, is that you think it's really good and you're like, all right, I'm almost done, and then you end up having to do more. I guess it all depends on how straight you want it to be. My fear is always, you know, you do it, you think it's good, paint it, and it's not so good. Only time will tell, right? Kind of all depends when you're painting a car or doing the body, how far you want to go with it, you know? But this car deserves to be nice, and I'm trying to make it nice. You let me know if I'm doing something wrong, because I'm no expert. This side actually turned out really good. Didn't really burn through. Kind of like lightly in a couple spots, but not as much as this one did. I sanded the one side of the hood. And if we go from one side to the other, you can see how I haven't started on that side. Realized that when I primered the hood, I had it on just leaning up against the wall. You can actually see the outline of it. And this is the side that was leaning on the ground. So I don't think I primed it as much. So we'll see how the other side goes, because obviously, as you can tell, it took off. Like, the darker color primer is the primer that was underneath. So you can see it took off a lot of the primer, which is okay, because the idea is that you're just filling in any scratches and low spots and anything like that. And then, like I said, this stuff will get another coat before I go with the 400 grit. So pretty good for a couple hours. I got half the hood and pretty much the whole front top part of the front bumper anyways, not the bottom part, which I'll have to do with it off the car. So like I said, it's a slow going process, but it definitely makes for a better paint job in the end if you do it like this. So we're just gonna keep doing it. It's the next day now, out here again, working on the car. I decided that I was gonna start on the door next, and kind of had a boo-boo. I didn't have the door quite adjusted up right, so I was trying to get it adjusted nice so that when I block it, you know, it's not going to be hitting the edge of the fender, that it's going to be pretty level. More or less the car is level, but then I had the doors and the fenders off, so everything needs to be readjusted. And I ended up moving the door a little bit, and it caught the edge of the door right there, and it you can see it chipped off a thin little bit of body filler, which really sucks. Yeah. So now I had to put some filler on there to fix that, so I'm waiting for that to dry. I also noticed that there was, right in here, there was a little bit of, I guess, rust pitting that got sandblasted out. And I guess I forgot about it or figured that the molding would cover it, which it will, because there is a big molding that goes on here. And I'm pretty sure it covers most of that. But I figured I'll put a coat of filler on there, smooth it out so that it doesn't look crappy, in case you can see it once it's painted.
All right, guys. You know, I paused the music, I thought, but it didn't pause. I just sanded the rear quarter, the top section here, and the top of the, just move these blocks, the top of the trunk lid, and this whole area here to the back. And so far it's actually pretty good. The only spot is right here where it's bare metal. Like, it feels really good this way. It's just, it feels like it's slightly, I don't know, a slight, ever so slight high spot, which I can't leave. So I think what I'm gonna have to do is tap it down a little bit, put a little bit of that 2-part glazing putty on top. I didn't really want to have to do anything like that, and I hoped I wouldn't have to do anything like that, but apparently that came through, and that's, everything else feels really good. I still haven't, I put the second coat on this part here, but I haven't sanded it down yet. Same with in there. So I think I'm gonna probably do something with this right now. It has been a couple days since the last clip, and so I figure I'd come out here today and get a tiny bit of work done. I really hate to have to do this, but it just feels like it's right there, right where it goes for the transition. I think this is just a little high. And then, I don't know, maybe it's a little, maybe the whole thing's a little high. This really sucks. I really don't want to have to do any more tapping or banging on here, you know? And I mean, I thought after the last primer that it was actually good, but trying to work it ever so slightly, because I don't think, see, already I can't even really feel it anymore. I mean, ideally you don't want anywhere that bare metal comes through. It's not necessarily a high spot, but it might be that, you know, it's just level with every, like here's one and it's totally level with the body filler and stuff, right? So that's not a high spot, but this is definitely a little bit of a high spot. And like I said, I'm trying not to hit it too hard because I don't want to cave it in. I just want to try to take it down a tiny bit without, you know. Okay, I think that feels pretty good now. So then we'll just put a thin coat of that filler on top, and just to fill any of these little imperfections, and then hopefully it should be good. Then I got some of this polyester glazing putty, they call it, which is the stuff I'm using to fill in any minor imperfections that I find. It's easier to sand than the regular body filler, so you can use a much finer sandpaper in order to sand it. Add some hardener. Don't need too much, but it is kind of chilly. I mean, I have the heat on, but it's still, you know, It's not hot out, that's for sure, so it may take longer than normal to dry, but that's okay. And hopefully one thin coat is going to get us where we need to be. Try to put it on smooth as possible and not very thick at all. Okay, so that should be good. I got a little left. I'll go around to any of those other little spots. It is the next day again. But here's how far we got. So I got the top part for sure of the door, some of the bottom, the rocker I sanded, the whole quarter down the bottom, the whole quarter at the bottom there, and that area there. So I ended up I put the first little coat of filler, then I had to kind of that glazing putty stuff, and then I had to add a second coat, kind of a little bit bigger to blend it in. But now it's actually really good. Of course, it's going to need some more primer on there, but it is also sanded with the 220 grit. I kind of screwed up when I sanded it the first time. I actually used 80 grit, and I thought I had it on one of the Durablocks, which is right here. I used this small Durablock with some heavier grit, but it actually was 80, which was way too heavy, so I put really deep scratches. So then when I put the second coat on, I sanded it with this stuff, which is 120, and that worked. No, 180. I don't remember. It is 120. Yeah, I actually got these long time ago at these rolls that were from like a furniture place, big long rolls of sandpaper. You can actually see a couple of them down right there, those big black rolls. So I just cut them up into smaller pieces, and I got tons of 120 grit sandpaper. This all turned out really good, and that turned out really good. The door so far is turning out good, and then I still need to do this like lower part of the door right here, sand it. And then I also sanded this little bit of filler where I screwed the door up there. That turned out good. Once I finish this part of the door, pretty much this side of the car will be done, minus a portion of the trunk lid and in the back here. And this side of the car will be sanded. And then I can push it over up against the S-10 here. I'll push it this way, and then I can do the other side and actually take advantage of those lights I put on the wall. Sand the other side, then reprime and be ready to start all over again, which will be awesomely fun. So thought I'd keep you updated, and I'll check back in when something else exciting happens, or sanding. I started sanding the back of the trunk lid here, and I actually found, you can see where it's still red right there, that's a dent. Now I'm pretty sure that dent is due to somebody opening this door and banging into the car when it was pushed back further. I bet it was Randy. I'll post in the comments below. You think it was Randy? Or maybe Clayton did it? I think it was Randy. But anyways, that's what happens when a car sits in a garage forever. So I have to fix that. Not a big deal. It's not that bad. It's just a minor kind of little imperfection. I don't know if I need to reprime the whole car again, or if I'll just prime kind of spots. Like, I think most of it's pretty good. There is some spots, like, I mean, where I bled through the body filler like that, it's still flat. It just, it probably just needed a little more primer around it. All right, guys, back at the GTO today. It's another day. Not gonna lie, it's probably a week after the last clip, but I'm out here working on it. And actually, I did do some work on it earlier in the week that I never did any filming, but I sanded the whole back. No, I guess you saw that part. I sanded the back of the trunk lid. Then I sanded the top of the spoiler, as you can see here. Now, this spoiler's fiberglass, so it's actually not the flattest, and I'm never gonna get it. I mean, I guess I could. If I spend a bunch of time, I could try to level it out really good, but at the end of the day, it's fiberglass, and it's kind of the way it looked from the factory, was not quite flat. But I did find a really big low spot right here, so I ended up filling that, and then along the edge, it was kind of chewed up, so I added a little bit to there, and then a couple small spots. Now the spoiler's only had one primer coat. This is its first primer coat, so it definitely needs another one. But like I said, this one was a really bad low spot when I blocked it. The rest there is a few low spots, or not low spots, but like actually right here there's a high spot, goes up and then kind of comes down, and then here it's kind of high, I guess where this part is mounted. So like I said, to get rid of that, I'd have to put a bunch of filler on there, which I don't really want to do. I found that this one was really low and you could really tell. So I got that fixed up. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to take, and I also sanded this filler here where the little dent was. So that's all good now. So what I'm going to do now is take off the spoiler and put it on that rack or whatever over there, so that I can sand like the bottom of it and stuff, and then I can also work on the rest of the trunk lid. I'm trying to get today for sure, I'm trying to get this all done, the trunk lid all done, and then maybe actually push the car over this way to this side so that I can start on the other side. So let's get the spoiler off. All right, so I got to take these 4 bolts out now. This trunk lid is actually off a different car that I got years ago, because the original one had lots of Bondo and stuff in it. So I had to put the holes, drill the holes. I actually used a bunch of pictures and 2-Lane Blacktop, the movie. There's a scene where he has the trunk lid open. So I wanted to kind of put it back in the exact same spot. I think I got it where it's supposed to be. This spoiler is not factory to this car. I have the Pontiac Historical Services, like I have the original build sheet or whatever you call it, sales sheet. So I know this spoiler is not original to this car, but it was on there when we got it, and I like it. When we bought this car, it was all done up like a 455 HO, which it is not, but that's why it had the big spoiler, I guess. But I always thought it was cool, and I wanted to leave it on there. Okay, there it is. The bottom side's not as important as the top side because you don't really see it, but we'll try to clean it up, make it look good. There was a couple spots there was kind of a weird spot, and there was kind of a weird spot, and there was a little kind of like a chip in the paint and a little kind of mark here. Now the one thing about this spoiler, and I mean it's fiberglass, it was made in the 70s, of course it's not going to be perfect, but if you take a look you can kind of see how it kind of has a gap, and then it doesn't, and then it does, and then here it kind of has a gap, and then it doesn't, and then here it kind of had a big gap. If you see, there's a gap all the way along, and then there isn't. It's kind of weird. I don't know how it's supposed to be from the factory exactly. What I'm just gonna do, what I did here is I'm just gonna take some of this filler and I'm gonna kind of just sort of like seam sealing it. I'm just gonna kind of put a little bit in the crack and sand it. Like, it's really weird. Like you can see here that there's a big lip here, and yet on this side there pretty much isn't. So I don't know if that's just the way it's made, if it was damaged at one time. Hard to say. I mean, it's on the bottom obviously, and you can't really see it. The only place you'll really notice would be when the trunk was open. So I mean, really not all that important. I mean, pretty much all this stuff was like it before when the car was painted, and I mean, you never noticed it, but I'm gonna kind of clean it up a little bit here and there. I figured I'd just kind of show you on a big panel like this. Like I said before, kind of just go crossways. So I'll kind of go over it here quickly. So just like that, after sanding only a little bit, you can already kind of notice, you know, I only went over it once or twice, but you can see where it's like already gray and where there's still red. Plus I should really close the trunk lid, I guess, because I have to do, you know, like try to do this part too, but
That, or I'll kind of do it separately. I don't want to lock the trunk lid because it has a power trunk lock, and then I have to hook a battery up to unlock it again. I really like wet sanding. When I did the Nova, I wet sanded most of it when I was doing blocking, which is a little less messy in a way. Like, it's messier because it's wet, but there's less dust. Your sandpaper also doesn't clog up as much, which is nice. I have to kind of be careful here because I have where the spoiler goes, you know, there's kind of like the metal's a little dented sort of there. I have to be careful when I sand that. Well, I'll keep sanding this, and I'll bring you back when I have some more progress. So I got the whole trunk sanded, the top sanded, and I got this sanded here all the way up to right there. And now you can see the lights I put on the wall, how they'll come in handy for seeing the side really good. And it actually works really good because I just sanded all this, and I can actually see there's a couple tiny, you probably can't see them, but a couple tiny little pinholes here in the filler. And then I also noticed a couple right there, little pinholes I guess I missed. Man, like I don't know. I think I have it. I primed it, blocked it again. Like I found, here's a little low spot. You can still see the red there. There's another one right there. Another one right there. And another one up here. All very minor. Probably could leave them. Probably might not notice them. I'm trying to make this car nice. The thing that scares me the most is that I'm gonna finish it, get it painted, and it's gonna look like crap after all this time of working on it. And I'm sure it'll probably look good, but you know, I'll notice it if there's something that's not right. And I guarantee when it's done, I probably won't be happy with it. There'll probably be something that I don't find to be good enough, which I know I shouldn't. It's not a show car. It's not, you know, it's gonna be driven, etc. I'm just trying to make it nice. All right, so I got this side all sanded now. This quarter panel, and this quarter panel actually turned out really nice. I don't have any spots. I put some of that glazing stuff on these little pinholes and those couple like low spots. I put the spoiler on, and this low spot is actually kind of covered by the spoiler, so I probably could have left it, but should fix it anyways. So I got them on there and on there. So I'm gonna let that stuff dry overnight, and then we will come back tomorrow, get more sanding done. So I got this whole quarter done. I also got the whole top edge of the door done. And then I had started with just this little piece and then worked my way. So I got the door, the fender, and half the hood left to do. And well, then I'm done that part. And then I'll fix all the little spots that need to be fixed. And then it'll be ready for primer again. And then we start all over again and do this all over again, which is awesome. So see you guys tomorrow.